The impudence, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of those Knuckleheads of Liberty podcasters, daring to voice opinions outside the mainstream of accepted thought. Listen if you dare. It's angry, it's funny, it's even sometimes sad, but it's always based on freedom and justice, as you will see. Here's our host, Jason McPhee.
Welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty. We're coming at you on January 23rd, 2023. And although it seems like we're always going through some rough political times nowadays, we've got a little bit of a break for you this week. It's National School Choice Week. And so because it's National School Choice Week, we are going to have a couple of education-related shows that just focus on that. And this show is going to be an interview with Larry Sand, who is president of the California Teachers Empowerment Network. He also writes for columns for a few newspapers as well. So let's get into this. But before we do, let me introduce you to the rest of our panel. In our upper left-hand corner, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. And in our lower left-hand corner, we have our screaming eagle of freedom, Tim Everett. He is a pilot in the state of California. My name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host. So let's jump into it. Larry Sand, so you've been a teacher in California. You are president of the, and by the way, James, can I get our invisible hand, can I get the visual up? So that was National School Choice Week. And let me show you the page for the California Teachers Empowerment Network. So this here is Larry Sand, and the network. See, it looks like I got off the homepage here, but this is an organization that is geared towards issues like school choice, issues like helping teachers to figure out if there's a better way to do things than what we've been doing. And Larry, I don't want to keep jumping on exactly what your organization do, so I think it'd be best to just hand it over to you, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your organization and how it's advancing choice and liberty here in California for education.
Okay, thank you, Jason. What we do basically is try to get information to teachers which is unedited, unfettered information, clear information that they don't get from their school districts or their union. And it's just facts. In my own personal writing, I have many opinions, but as president of the California Teachers Empowerment Network, my goal is just to get simple numbers, facts to teachers that they don't get elsewhere, because everything they get, as I said, comes with a certain spin. And for example, on union issues, the unions are constantly, dare I say, lying just about everything, every chance they get. And we try to give them, teachers the facts, not the union made up stories. And we've been doing it since 2006. I'm sorry, go ahead, Jason.
Oh, sorry. I'm just going to say you guys must have been huge fans of the Janus decision when that came down.
As a matter of fact, Rebecca Friedrichs, whose case came before Mark Janus, is on my board. Rebecca's been a buddy for many years. And her case, when Scalia died, her case went down the tubes. And so, but anyway, as you well know, Mark Janus, via Mark Janus, was reignited, and it was successful. Yeah, so that was a great moment. On the downside, I'm a little disappointed that not more teachers chose to stop paying the union as a condition of employment. They don't have to do that anymore. They're still forced to be in the collective bargaining agreement, whether they want to or not, because it's really monopoly bargaining. But if I'm a great teacher and I want to write my own contract and deal with the school district that way, I still can't do that. So the Janus decision was great, yes, but we need to do more.
Just curious on that Janus decision, I just wanted to jump in a little more on that. Do you think there's a possibility that some of these teachers are not fleeing the union only because the system is so terrible that they're worried that they could have problems with their administrators or others because they maybe they want that protection, I guess, that they think the union offers. and dealing with, because I've just heard so many things about the bad conditions that new teachers have to work with in the public school system. And if that's the case, maybe they're actually a little bit in fear coming in the door that they could lose their job right away too.
Well, for a teacher, tenure or permanence, as it's called in California, is 2 years. Basically, after 2 years, you have a job for life. Before 2 years, you really don't have many rights, and the union doesn't do much for you. Okay. I don't think administrators are an issue. I mean, the administrators I've worked for are, they have to deal with the union, and they're not always happy dealing with the union. But first of all, I think most teachers stay in the union because they're afraid. They think their coworkers might, do something bad to them, which is always possible. And they also think that they're going to lose certain perks, which is not true. I mean, they think they're going to lose their pension. This is not true. The pension is part of the deal with the state. And if you talk about losing, you will. The one thing you do lose is your liability insurance, which is very important for teachers. But there are other organizations like the Association for American Educators. I'm on the board there, yes, full disclosure, which provide much better liability insurance at a much cheaper price, and they're not a union. So teachers can pay about $200 a year to AAE and get the same thing that they're getting from the union for about $1,000 a year. So one of the things, can I just add, I have to add one thing, I'm sorry. Most teachers don't know, they're not just signing up with their local union. In California, it's a unified dues structure, and most of your dues are going to the state affiliate, which is usually the California Teachers Association, and the national affiliate, which is the National Education Association. About 90% of their dues goes to the state and national affiliates, and a good deal of that is spent on politics. Dare I say, all of it, 99% of it goes in a leftward direction.
So do you all, going back to the Janus decision and all that, do you all actually get involved in litigation at all?
Was I involved in the litigation? No, I was
the organization. I'm speaking about the organization, not you personally.
I'm sorry, is my organization, the California Teachers Empowerment Network?
Does your organization get involved in litigation?
No, we're about information. We're a 501c3. We don't take sides. We just give teachers unfettered information. We certainly explained the Janus decision. We explained what would or would not happen, but we were not a part of any litigation, no.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And just for our viewers out there, as we've been talking about Janus a lot, the Janus decision allowed for sort of a right to work sort of situation where you don't have to join the union in a lot of these situations in different states. So before there was sort of this idea where they could force you in because, hey, you're benefiting from it and therefore you have to join. But this gave people the freedom to opt out. And that just happened 3 or 4 years ago, I think. So.
Yeah, it was 2018. I need to explain one thing, Jason. You never had to join the union. Mm-hmm. Joining the union is not an issue. You had to pay the union, even if you didn't join.
You used to call it fair share. Yes, you're right.
It was called a fair share or an agency fee, which was about 80 to 90% of what a full dues payer was. So yeah. But yeah, I just wanted to clarify.
Here in California, I used to pay the fair share. I never joined the union for 28 and a half years. I paid this so-called fair share. It was $1 less than the union dues.
$1?
It was $1. Yes.
That's the new one on me. Okay, it's usually about $100, but okay, you're the champ.
Well, Larry, what was it that sort of woke you up on a lot of this stuff? I mean, you decided to go into teaching, and clearly something must have gone off the rails for you. What was it?
I not to bore you with my personal history, but I started teaching in New York in 1971 and got laid off in 1975, and that was the first thing I saw was wrong, because New York City. I was in New York City then. New York City was going broke. And they had to lay off teachers. And they didn't lay off the poorest performers. They laid off the newest hires, of which I was one of them. And it kind of galled me because I may not have been the greatest teacher in the world, but I was certainly better than some of the teachers who didn't lose their job. So that was sort of the first thing. And then I moved out to California, began teaching again in 1994. And, just as things went on, I saw things that were wrong. I saw incompetent teachers. I saw more things about good teachers getting laid off because they were the newest teachers. I saw teachers doing bad things to kids and nothing happened to them. And it's like just year after year, things started to pile up. And I eventually just decided I had to do something.
And just for our listeners too, I mean, if you're going into public education, it's all unionized. Therefore, when you get when they have to lay people off or anything like that, it's always the last in or the first out. So there's no person who's going to say, oh, this person is really good, we're going to keep them. Nope, sorry, it's all seniority. So that's kind of the way it works.
Yep.
So
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And always the most incompetent always bubble to the top.
I'm sorry to get that.
Oh,
no, I said the most incompetent always bubble to the top.
Oh, to the top. It certainly seems that way. Yeah.
Well, Larry, what's your assessment of, since we're all here in California, what's your assessment of California's educational system? Is this we on a sinking ship?
We have a sinking ship. The recent test scores are a disaster.
Yes.
And nothing. And we try to get a couple of school choice initiatives on the ballot in November. Couldn't get enough signatures. On the plus side, we do have charter schools. We have about 1,300 charter schools and about 650,000 students in them. That's the only real school choice we have. But for students who don't live near a charter school, or if the local charter school is full, they are out of luck. And if they don't like their local school or they have a bad teacher, it is too bad. They're stuck. And this is a terrible thing to do to families, to children, and ultimately to the country, because we're raising a generation of not too smart people. I'll be kind.
Yeah.
Let me just add, and I don't want to dump on all teachers. There are some wonderful teachers and wonderful schools, but then again, there are some really bad ones, and those are the ones we need to focus on. I'm sorry, Leon.
No, it's no problem. But charter schools, in terms of the number of charter schools, are they limited in California? Is there a limit on how many schools we can have, how many charter schools we can have?
That's a good question. I don't. The unions have been trying to do that. I don't think they're successful. I don't think there's any cap on the number of charter schools, not to the best of my knowledge.
Okay.
I know that was one of the things during the pandemic, is that when there was extra resources that they were trying to send to the schools, I believe it was the union in Los Angeles that was trying to say, well, one of the stipulations is the money can't go to charters.
Right. I remember something like that. So I was wondering if in general, you're right, Jason, because I remember that very issue. I was just wondering if in general there's a cap upon, or statewide, if there's a cap on charter schools. I don't know. I never found that out.
Yeah, well, that's standard operating procedure for the unions. It's like they could say, we want more money, we want more this, more that, and there's always something about it. We want to knock out charter schools. They don't use that language, but they love it. They say they're unaccountable.
Yeah,
they're accountable just like the supermarket. Supermarkets are accountable to people, because if the supermarket doesn't doesn't sell good product at a good price, nobody goes there. And it's the same.
Right.
That's the way schools should run too.
Yeah,
schools should run as a free market entity.
Yeah.
And when you go shopping, you're not forced to go to the supermarket down the street. You can go to the supermarket across town. Better food, better produce, whatever. You don't have to go to the supermarket down the corner. Why do you have to go to the school down the block? I don't get it.
Yeah, that's one of the best analogies I've seen, is that I believe it was Hoover Institution. I think it was. They had this little video, and it showed, suppose there was a government-run cafeteria in every neighborhood, and you're forced to go to the government-run cafeteria for your food because, hey, these experts are from the government and they know what you need. So don't bother going to any place else. You stay in your district and you go to the cafeteria that's in your district.
Isn't that a scary proposition? But this is how we do education. Yes, sir.
And remember those government-run cafeterias, never go out of business, and even when they give you food poisoning, they still stay in business, and all is good.
I'd rather starve to death and go to a government cafeteria. My God. Scary. That is scary.
Yeah, they'll give you some untested mystery food and tell you it's all safe. But but you brought up charters, and I was wondering, is the choice to be able to go to a charter in California, is that only for, say, a public charter, or do they have such a thing as private charters, and do people have any choice with those as well?
Well, there's some charters that have private boards, but they're all public in the sense that they use public funds. They are not private schools. The unions like to bang on the private drum, so to speak, but they are all public schools in the sense that all the taxpayers are paying for them. And most of them, thankfully, are not unionized. There are some that are unionized, yes, but a lot of independent charter schools, sort of one-offs here and there, the unions don't bother with them. It's too much trouble to start organizing school by school. So they go after the bigger, the charter chains, so to speak.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Okay. Just curious. So, what do you think the biggest obstacle is in California to getting change? I mean, obviously, the union appears to be certainly a huge obstacle, but is that really the only obstacle, or is that just the biggest one? Or
that's the biggest one, because somebody on the inside told me that the CTA considers themselves the fourth co-equal branch of government in California. And this was told to me by a state senator, California state senator, who shall remain nameless, and they consider the assembly their chamber. And they're right. They are the fourth co-equal branch of government. So they are by far the biggest problem. And then the second biggest problem is that most people don't realize this. When I grew up in the 1950s, my mother sent me off to school, and she didn't have to worry that I'd be, getting, a weird political education, because that's teachers and schools and parents had pretty much the same values. Ain't that way now. It might be, but it might not be. So parents especially need to wake up. And if you send your kid to a public school, every day, and I mean every day, talk to your kid. What did you learn today? Did your teacher say anything interesting? Did he talk about, you may want to lead them a little bit into certain areas, especially in the, with all the sexual craziness that's going on. I mean, you really don't want to have your 4-year-old coming home, wanting to grow up to be a princess. And this is happening. It's just crazy. So the unions are probably the biggest problem. And the fact that parents and frankly citizens are not aware or just aren't willing to do anything is the second problem.
I think the whole agenda, this transgender agenda and the race obsessive education is a real problem within the public schools. I mean, you can't even call that public education anymore. It's public indoctrination. It's probably the correct word nowadays.
That's right.
It's a real problem.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is indoctrination. It's not education anymore, and teachers feel like they have the right to impose what they think on other people's children. And frankly, the whole transgender thing is nothing more than a cult.
Yes.
And it's a very dangerous cult, because if a kid thinks he's a girl and he's wants to get hormones, or a young woman wants to cut off her breast, these have lifelong ramifications. This isn't just something temporary that'll pass in a couple of years. This is a cult that can have serious ramifications, and it is a cult.
Yes.
Well, what I can't believe out of all this is that we're in a situation now where there's some in the Democrat Party who seem to be pushing ideas that the school should be able to talk to kids independently of their parents on this kind of thing, and it's just absolutely nuts.
Yeah, no, it is nuts. It's crazy, and even there are some parents are waking up. And there are a lot of, parents running for school boards. There's a group called Moms for Liberty, which is a very conservative group, which is active all over the country. As parents defending education. Thank God it's happening, but it's not widespread enough. I mean, these groups are wonderful, but we need more. And there are still too many parents who just send their little Johnny and Janie off to school thinking, that they're going to learn about, the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. Now, they may be, but they may not be. So that's why parents must talk to their children daily, and I mean daily, about what they're learning in school.
We've talked a little bit about charters, but we've had some, I guess, wins in the other states, and maybe I don't know if the national is right to say, but certainly outside of California, on the school choice.
Arizona in particular.
Yeah, on the
Arizona,
school
West
choice.
Virginia. Arizona, West Virginia, and as we speak, I mean, Iowa can be voting on a very similar bill too. It's advancing, but and it's wonderful. It does my heart good to see this, but of course, it's state by state, which is as it should be. I don't want to see the feds get involved in this, and it is slow. So, but in the meantime, and I can't say enough, you're sending your kid off to school, and the fact that Iowa is going to do something great, could do something great today, isn't going to help your kid if he or she is not in Iowa and is in a school in a system like California's, which has no private option.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess that's what I was trying to get to, is the idea that, I guess there's a choice in California in the sense of charters, but these are all public options. And so one of the issues in some of the wins they've had outside of California is that it literally just ties the money to the kid. And then the kid can go to wherever they want, whether that be a private school, public charter, or whatever. And so, I guess, what's the state of choice in California? Is it just public charters? Is that it? Or is there...
I mean, you can send your kid to a private school, of course, but you'd have to pay for it. And so many of those schools are becoming woke, but we don't need to get into that here. It's basically you can homeschool, charter, traditional, public, private. You don't have much choice. You might be able to get out of your school district, going through some paperwork to do so, but you are really restricted in California. And we're going to be the last state to fall in line. I mean, the good news is that many other states, Arizona was brought up, West Virginia recently moved, and I think Iowa is about to. And the more states that do it and they see that it's working, then more states will follow.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, that's right. I totally agree with that, Larry. But the thing is that how many generations of young people will be lost in this so-called public education before we wake up and try and change this poisonous system that we have ongoing right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many? I don't know, but it's ongoing.
Yes.
And it's sad. You're right, Leon. Absolutely.
Well, Larry, what are some of the biggest successes you've had in this fight that you've had for choice and empowering teachers in California?
I mean, in all honesty, we haven't been that successful. We have helped a lot of teachers get out of the union. They didn't know that they didn't have to pay money. After the Janus case. They didn't know that they could get away with agency fees before the Janus case. So that's been that's been most of the good work we've done, is helping teachers get out, explaining the options, what happens, the good, the bad, and, most of it's good, of course. And, they're worried about liability, because that's one thing the union hammers them with. I come back, you can join a group like the Association of American Educators, which I mentioned earlier, or Christian educators. If you're a Christian, it's pretty much the same kind of deal. On a personal level, when I speak publicly, I speak about homeschooling. That is, if a parent can do it, is the best option, because you got your kid, and whatever your kid is learning, you're the one who's putting it in his head or her head. And every now and and sometimes parents will come up and say, "Gee, I don't know, I don't know about homeschooling," and I just try to encourage them. And there's a Homeschool Legal Defense Association website, which is a great one-stop shop for homeschoolers. And so anyway, and I have convinced parents to homeschool, and that's very gratifying. About 10 years ago, I got a mother of 5. And I just sort of.
I'm going to try to add to that, if I could, to what Larry was saying. I was schooled from first grade on with all the way to the second year of high school by Irish Catholic nuns in a private school, a Catholic school, parochial school. And I consider it still to this day the best education I ever received. And what it did, I think just the reading, writing, and arithmetic, and it made the moral background, a few slaps of the ruler and ear pulling by Irish Catholic nuns who had no qualm whatsoever. Gave me the ability to self-educate, which is increasingly more important as we move, on into the technological age. And I think it's something that you carry with you throughout adulthood that is essential to total education. And with that, I must bid you adieu. I have an appointment to go to. And so, Larry, it's been a pleasure. And Jason and Leon and James, as usual, toodaloo, adios, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Tim. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
There goes our screaming eagle. But Larry, we're starting to get close to the end of our show, and I was wondering, if you wanted to share any kind of future ideas you have that you're trying to push on this fight, and also, any last thoughts you wanted to leave with our audience as well.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, there were 2 school choice initiatives battling it out on the ballot, which was a bad idea because it was confusing. Why are there 2? Anyway, neither got signatures. So in the future, we need to get it on the ballot. And even if it's not successful, it'll at least start a conversation. And I will be out. I mean, I spoke a lot for one of the ones that didn't work out. And I'll be out there just yelling and screaming and talking to parents about why this is a good thing, and I always use the supermarket analogy, which we went through earlier. Why not in education? Why is there a government monopoly on education? It shouldn't be that way. Shouldn't you, the parent, have the power to decide where your children goes to school and what they learn? Because if you're sending your kid to a public school where they're being taught all the sexual stuff and critical race theory, why should you? And then you have to deprogram your kid when they get home? Why? This is terrible. It's child abuse, literally. And I don't use that term easily.
Yes. No, I agree. So is there a school choice ballot that anyone is thinking about getting on the next?
Yeah. Well, at least one of the 2, and maybe both groups that tried and failed in 2022. Claim they're going to be back in 2024. So just let's say our prayers, and hopefully this will come to be. It's a little too soon. It would be, just past the last election. So, but hopefully during the course of this year, you'll be hearing about them.
Well, that's great to know, and I'm glad that there's something happening out there that people can look forward to in a way they can get involved. You can also check out his Twitter page where he posts a lot of articles too. And thanks a lot for joining us, Larry, and thank you, our audience, for listening, and we will see you in the next one. Till then, stay free.
Yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.